Hey there, everybody, and welcome to our Monday Ask Me Anything. We've changed the format a little bit. We're going to do a YouTube challenge each week, and it's going to be pretty much the same thing that we've been doing. But what I'd like to focus on is one area each week. And this week, we're going to focus on how to heal your nervous system. So that's really what we're going to talk about. I'm obviously going to wait for people to get in here. We've got about 2 more minutes before we actually start. Hello, Poultry Flowers. Good to see you. Oh gosh, we've got 25 people in here already. That's awesome. I know my YouTube coach doesn't get excited until it's over 500 people, but I've never had 500 people in a live, so I'm going to take what I can get. I'm really happy with 100, and that's usually what we get to throughout the day today. We still have about another minute. For those of you who are waiting in the wings, maybe you're a little shy. That's okay, no problem. I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button, especially if you've been here before and you anticipate you're going to like it. I'd appreciate if you do that because the more activity we get in the comments down below, as well as the more activity we get as far as likes, the more YouTube promotes the video. Also, while we're waiting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of new features coming out, and that way you'll get notified when I release new videos. And I think you can set it so you get notified when I post in the community section. So that's another benefit there. Alrighty, we are at 12 o'clock my time, maybe 1 o'clock your time or something before that. But anyhow, so today we're talking about healing your nervous system. And as I mentioned before we got started, or before it clicked over to the 12 o'clock hour, we're going to change the format a little bit on these Mondays. And it's just going to be a little bit. But what I would really like to do is focus in on one thing. And today, or this week's challenge, is to focus on healing your nervous system. Because if our body factory is not functioning properly, if it's miscalibrated or dysfunctional or whatever word you want to use, it's going to impact our pain, our sleep, our mood, our mental clarity, and cause us extra distress, which is just going to increase our stress response and cause further dysregulation of our nervous system. Now, today I didn't pick any one thing that you need to focus on because I don't know for you what is causing your extra stress, unnecessary stress on your nervous system. And I just published a book. It was released yesterday on healing your nervous system that goes through a lot of different things. But basically, anything that causes you stress physically, interpersonally, emotionally, cognitively, or environmentally is going to trigger that stress response. And if you're constantly working that stress muscle, and no, it's not a muscle, but I'm using an analogy. You're constantly using that stress muscle and you're not using your relaxation muscle, then they're going to become very imbalanced and you're going to experience excess distress, hormonal imbalances, and emotional dysregulation. So I'm wondering what types of things are causing you unnecessary distress, and maybe even identify one thing that you might be considering trying to do in order to address that source of distress. Anything we talk about today, I have the link pinned at the top of the chat, but you can always remember that you can always go to docsnipes.com/clones and ask my clone AI about getting more in-depth information. In these AMAs, I really don't go real deep on a lot of things. So you can get a lot more information. You can do a deep dive and really explore and individualize the response for you when you communicate with my AI. So what questions do you have? This is a very quiet group today. Normally we'd be running off like crazy in the chat room. One of the things for me this week that I'm going to do in order to try to reduce unnecessary distress is reduce the amount of time that I am on social media. I am going to reduce the amount of time I'm on social media to less than 30 minutes a day. And I am going to see how I feel at the end of the week. If I feel like I missed out on anything, if I feel like I conserved some energy, and how it just impacted everything else that's important in my rich and meaningful life when I freed up a lot of unnecessary or energy that was being spent unnecessarily. The new book that was just released is Healing Your Nervous System, and it's available at DocSnipes.com. Chuck, can you put a link to that in the chat thing for people, please? You can buy it there. It's also included in the Doc Snipes self-help courses over on DocSnipes.com. So if you sign up to get the self-help resources at DocSnipes.com, you get access to the clone, you get access to all my books, and you get access to the courses that have the videos and worksheets in them. So there's a lot there for people to partake of. And I actually, if you go to the community section on my channel, I actually created a promo code for you. If you put in DEC, as in December, DEC 30, when you sign up, you can save 30% this month on a subscription to the Doc Snipes channel. So those are things. Turning off the Wi-Fi is certainly something that people have talked about doing. And I know one of the podcasts my husband listens to, one of his podcasters does that for about a month every single year. They kind of go into 1980s mode where there's the TV and there's the telephone, but there is no Wi-Fi, and they're not using their cell service to surf the internet or anything. They're going sort of back in time. And for a lot of people, that certainly can reduce distress and encourage you to redirect energy to things that are important. And if you decide to do that for this week, I'd be interested. Drop some comments for the video about how it's impacting you and whether you think it's worthwhile, and some of the challenges that you faced when you turned off your Wi-Fi, whether it's just you're turning it off after 5 p.m. or you're turning it off for an entire week. And, for me, being that my business is 100% online, I don't think that it's likely that I'm ever going to turn off my Wi-Fi and internet for an entire week, but I can certainly see the value of turning it off after work hours. Hello, Space-Time. Good to see you again. Unfortunately, age is not something that we can actually affect as far as healing our nervous system, but we can recognize that a lot of things that we do that cause inflammation increase the aging process. And as we've talked about before, as we age, our cognitive abilities can slow down, and they typically decline a little bit. And a lot of that has to do with memory and processing speed. People who have stayed working longer, people who've stayed active longer, tend to have much less problem with that. I've got a good friend who is in her early 80s, and she actually runs one of the pet rescues around here. And you would never know that she was in her 80s. She goes on trips, and trips and bikes wherever she goes, biking adventures or something. I don't know what it's called, but I mean, she's in great physical shape. She's in great cognitive health, and she's doing well. My grandfather stayed very, very active, and I noticed a precipitous decline in his mental abilities when he quit working. And he also developed congestive heart failure. And as that progressed and his oxygenation got lower, he also had cognitive issues. So paying attention to what we can do to reduce that unnecessary stress, reduce inflammation, and heal our nervous system is certainly important. And like I said, we can't turn back the clock. We can't stop aging. But this week's challenge of choosing one thing you're going to do to heal your nervous system will help you at least not contribute to the aging process. You may not slow it down a lot, but you're not going to be accelerating it. So that's a good thing. Can I be codependent if I constantly have the urge to check my partner's phone and think he's avoiding me when he doesn't notice my abandonment cues? I'm wondering if this might also be due to my low self-esteem issues. There's a lot there, and it could be codependent. Ultimately, labeling it probably isn't going to help you a lot, but examining how these abandonment cues are causing you distress. And it sounds like, and I could be wrong, it sounds like you're expecting him to do a lot of mind reading and being aware and anticipating what's going on with you, being hyper vigilant to those abandonment cues. And that may not be fair when you're feeling like you're getting ready to be abandoned, when you're feeling anxious. It's important to articulate that to him. And you may not know why you feel that way, or you may know why, but it's important that you let him in on the fact that, hey, I'm feeling anxious, and this is what would be helpful for you to do. If you can give him strategies to help him respond appropriately to your abandonment cues, that can go a long way to reducing stress between both of you. And it can also potentially help you feel more empowered and improve your self-esteem if you're suddenly getting your needs met. I wonder if his lack of meeting your needs in the way that you want has more to do with him not understanding than not wanting to do it. And as a result, when those needs aren't met, it can have a negative impact on your self-esteem because you're like, well, why isn't he responding? Just kind of thinking out loud there. But that's certainly something you can work on this week to help heal your nervous system, is notice when you start feeling those abandonment fears, and then identify based on the facts in this context at this time, is there actually a threat of abandonment? Based on the facts in this context, if he's not doing what you want him to be doing, is it because he's willfully ignoring you? Or is it because he just doesn't know? He's clueless. And again, those are things that are important to differentiate, because one has to do with whether he's being caring and responding to you. The other one has to do with whether he's aware and knowledgeable. So that's a good question. And that can be a great thing to focus on this week in terms of reducing your distress levels. Yes, minimizing time on social media is very helpful unless you use it like we used to use the telephone to connect. Like I use Facebook Messenger. That's about the only thing my mother-in-law will use. So I use Facebook Messenger to communicate with her. And I use text to communicate with my children who don't live here anymore. But a lot of the other social media, there's not a lot of benefit to it. There are a few friends that I go and I check their Facebook page to see what they're up to. But I can just as easily pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, how you doing? Or text them. Some people don't like getting phone calls anymore. But it's all about how you respond to social media and whether it makes you feel empowered and warm and fuzzy when you get done or if it's exhausting. And for me, I find it exhausting and overwhelming and just overstimulating. Well, moving away from ignorant people can be helpful, Pete. And that can be a goal for this week for your YouTube challenge. Figuring out what, or defining for yourself, not for us, what ignorant means to you and how you're going to move away from them. You may not be able to physically move away from them. Maybe you work with a bunch of them, but how can you set those boundaries so the stuff they're saying doesn't get to you or doesn't bother you? There are some things that I just turn off. I don't want to hear it. Or if I walk in and I hear people having what I perceive to be an ignorant discussion, I may just walk out because I don't want to hear it and then be like thinking about it. But if I do hear things that make no sense to me and it's not appropriate for me to get clarification to understand their perspective, sometimes somebody will say something that I think is uninformed, but I don't know because guess what? I don't know everything. None of us do. So I may ask, tell me more about that. Help me understand your perspective and try to understand more about the things I may not know. And maybe we all know the same stuff, but they have a different interpretation, and that's their right. Setting and maintaining those boundaries is so important. And that's something we're having to do a lot right now because there can be people that are aggressive and violate our mental boundaries and our emotional boundaries, telling us what we are supposed to think and what we're supposed to feel. And it's just stressful. And that's a violation. That's aggression. Our boundaries. I have a right to think and feel what I think and feel. You may not agree, and that's fine. You don't have to. And that's the beauty of boundaries. Working through being frustrated with someone who wronged me, but I can't accept and forgive them, even though I want to, and I want to reconnect, though I've lost trust in them. So that can be a great challenge for you this week for the YouTube challenge to heal your nervous system by moving toward forgiveness. It is going to reduce unnecessary stress because that resentment, that anger that you hold to that person causes unnecessary stress and activation of that stress response. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is step back and ask yourself what the function of holding on to this anger is. What are you afraid of? If you let go of this anger, what are you afraid is going to happen? If you let go of this anger, what are you afraid it is saying? Remember, forgiveness is what I call a power play. It's me saying, I'm going to forgive you for that. It doesn't mean it was okay. It doesn't mean I'm going to forget it. I'm definitely not going to forget it. But I am not going to continue to be angry about it. I'm not going to continue to steal energy from the things that are important in my rich and meaningful life right now to tie them up in the past, holding on to that resentment. We can use our energy instead of being angry and resentful. We can use our energy to learn from the situation and figure out how to stay safe in the future. We can use our energy to nurture different things. Maybe that person isn't safe to have in your life. If that's the degree of it, then okay. Using that energy to nurture other things. If they are safe to have in your life, they made a mistake, they've tried to atone for it, make amends, and you're just still feeling angry and resentful. I'm wondering whether that's covering up fear that they're going to do it again, anxiety that you're going to get hurt again. And that's where using your energy to examine that past situation and how that came to be, how can you prevent that in the future? Some people will lose privileges, so to speak. If they betray us, I may still want to be their friend, but I'm not going to trust them with super secrets. I'm not going to give them my house key and let them watch my house while I'm gone for a week if I don't trust them enough. I may still be friendly with them. I may still even be friends, and they may be able to earn that trust back. But forgiveness doesn't mean saying, okay, it's all over, clean slate, I forgive you, let's move on like it never happened. That's not forgiveness. That is, I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for. It's not safe. If somebody has betrayed you in some way, they need to earn your trust back. They need to prove that they're not going to do it again. And we don't need to test them repeatedly. We just need to see how they act. And that's one of the hardest things for families that have a loved one who is addicted, for example. When that person enters recovery and is clean and sober, they have to demonstrate over time that, hey, I'm not going to relapse. I'm not going to do that again. But the family generally doesn't say, okay, come on back. Here are the passwords to all of our bank accounts, and we trust you. We would love to, but that's not safe or sane to do. So what is the function of holding on to that anger? How is it protecting you? What does it mean? And what would it look like in your relationship with this person if you started to forgive them, if you let them start earning your trust back? Are there any other questions? Remember, we changed the format of this, and this is a YouTube challenge. And every week, we are going to present another YouTube challenge in order to help you get healthier and happier. And this week's challenge is healing your nervous system. What steps are you going to take? What steps are you going to take in order to try to heal your nervous system this week? Identify one thing that you'll do all week, or a couple of changes you're going to make, whatever it is, but something that you can accomplish in a week. And then throughout the week, I want you to comment below this video regarding how effective that was for you and any challenges you're having in implementing those change strategies. And we will try to keep up with monitoring those chats and assisting you throughout the week. However, we also have the Doc Snipes clones that can help you in between these AMAs and YouTube challenges. So for those people that are here right now, what things what is a thing that you're willing to try to change this week in order to start helping to heal your nervous system? And space-time identifies reconnecting with God. And for a lot of people, they may have a lot of anger at their higher power. Identifying what that means for you to reconnect with God or your spirituality. What does it mean to reconnect with your values? What does it mean to reconnect with your environment? And then once you figure out what it means, what's one thing that you're going to do to start doing that? And how does recognizing the interaction between you and your environment and you and others around you and you and your values, how does it change? How does it reduce your stress when you are actually acting in accord with approving those with those things? Using a journal to record how you're connecting to yourself is awesome. It provides you a lot of insight, and over time you can go back and look and see how far you've come, and you might even recognize things that you've done in the past, and you're like, hey, I did that to reconnect with myself 6 months ago. Maybe I need to do that again. Maybe I need to spend, rent a Airbnb or a cabin at a state park and spend 24 or 48 hours just by myself, getting to know myself. Who knows? But definitely getting to know yourself is really important. If you don't know what your thoughts, wants, and needs are, you can't meet them. And if you're not meeting them, you're going to create stress in your body, in your mind, and in your life. Doing meditations can be very helpful for people. Some people will do the loving kindness meditation. I know I did that one this morning. Other people will focus on prayer, guided meditations. There are a lot of different types. And I encourage people to choose maybe one type of meditation that they want to explore and try it. See how it works for them, see how it feels, and see if it helps them use their energy more widely, or more effectively, feel less stressed throughout the day. One of the things that I have a video on reprogramming your subconscious and envisioning yourself succeeding and achieving your goals right before you go to bed can really help reprogram your subconscious and create a feeling of motivation and personal empowerment the next day. And it's not something that happens literally overnight. You're going to have to do it several days in a row. But there's a lot of research with athletes and with people who've been very successful that visualizing their intentions right before they went to sleep somehow wired their brain for success the next day. If they saw themselves doing it, their brain started expecting success. We can try redirecting our ruminations. If we start having ruminative thoughts about politics, about something somebody said, about whether we're going to be successful, whatever our ruminations are about. And remember, ruminations are typically stressful thoughts that just get stuck on repeat or spiral in our head, and you just kind of go down this rabbit hole of what ifs. You don't necessarily want those. And when we start ruminating, when we start having these thoughts that hijack our mental processes, it's important to notice them, to acknowledge them, and then to turn our attention back, recognizing that we do have the ability to turn our attention to something else. We may have to do it intentionally, but we can do it. And then if our mind wanders again, all right, bring it right on back. It's kind of like a 3-year-old at the playground who keeps wanting to wander off, and you're like, nope, come back over here. And then they wander off again. Nope, come back over here. You need to stay close to me. Our mind can do that. And if you think of the ruminations, and I do a lot of personification. So I will view my thoughts as that little 3-year-old wandering off. And I'm like, come on back here. And that's how I do it. Other people will envision like building a wall or putting a barrier up. So those thoughts are over on the other side of the barrier and they can focus on what they're focusing on. Reducing ruminations is a great way to start healing your nervous system, because ruminations is kind of like sitting in a car and revving that engine. It wastes a lot of gas. It stresses out the engine over time, and there's really no point to it. It doesn't get you anywhere. And that's a great suggestion for something that you might try in the YouTube challenge. Any ideas for making intentions? I'm a visual person. I prefer to have a vision board for my rich and meaningful life. And when I have intentions, I prefer to have something to look at where I know, where I'm literally visualizing what it looks like. If I have an intention about, for example, succeeding in a job interview or something, obviously that's going to be harder to get a picture of, if you will, but knowing what that looks like. And when we do treatment plans, one of the key phrases that I look for in my supervisees' treatment plans is the phrase, as evidenced by. If somebody is trying to recover from depression, they will say, I will have an improved mood, because we want to have something positive. I'll have an improved mood as evidenced by, and they'll give 3 examples of observable things that will show that they are experiencing an improved mood. Or I will have more energy. I will have more energy as evidenced by getting up and taking a shower, going out on a walk, etc. So when you're setting intentions, you want to know what it looks like when you actually achieve that. And again, it's about adding something more than taking away. Instead of saying I'll be less depressed or I'll have less fatigue, I'll say I'll be in a better mood or I'll have more energy as evidenced by. And then I can check that every day and go, well, did I have that evidence today? You can use Likert scales from 1 to 4, not at all, somewhat, mostly, and all the way, however you want to anchor those, to identify and say, I will have an improved mood as evidenced by an average daily mood of 3 out of 4 for the entire week. So that's a way you can observe the progress in your intentions. What does it look like? And how will you know when you've achieved it? Okay, so that's a great follow-on, Terracotta. I'd like to decrease the amount of compulsions I do, like accepting that I can't control everything. So I would start with that. I will increasingly accept that I can't control everything. And note how many times per day you start trying to control something that is out of your control, and take steps to recognize that, identify and say, you know what, this is not something I can control. Okay. And then practice your distress tolerance skills so you can feel safer and more empowered. Even if it's out of control, is it going to impact you? If so, control what you can. Do what you need to do to stay safe. But you can't control other people's behaviors. You can't control other people's feelings. You can't control the weather. So noting what you can control and how you can use your energy to improve, control what you can within your part of the universe. Let me go back. I want to allow myself to work through my constant fears by deciding to do an intention for the day. And figuring out what that intention is, to when you say work through my constant fears, those fears are feelings that are related to prior experiences. And that's your body saying, hey, we may not be safe. So ultimately, it comes down to trying to start to feel safer. What can you do in your world to help you feel safer? And without knowing, and I'm not asking you to share, but without knowing what your fears are, I can't give specific examples. But if I have a fear of abandonment, then I may focus on feeling safer, as evidenced by recognizing that I can take care of myself. Will it suck if this relationship ends? Yes, it will. And I can survive. And developing those intentions so I recognize that I can acknowledge things that are scary. I recognize that I can identify ways to cope with those things that are scary to me and tolerate the distress. Again, some things that we fear may happen and they may cause pain, but the pain is not going to be all-consuming. We can tolerate the pain. We can tolerate the distress, even if we don't like it. I would encourage you to look at the videos on acceptance and commitment therapy. Hayes has a lot of really good stuff in there for dealing with fears and anxieties. And I would encourage you to write your intentions down and review them each night before bed. Even if it's not something you're thinking about right when you're sleeping, if you review them each night before bed, your intention to help yourself recognize that you are safe, your intention to let go of those things that are out of your control. In recovery, we have what we call the serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's a big one. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That one's gotten me through a lot of really challenging times because I'm something of a control freak. I'll admit, because of past traumas and stuff, I like to be in control. And I can feel very frustrated and powerless when there are things that I can't control. And I have to remember that all I'm doing by getting frustrated over things like, the weather or what have you, that's just burning up energy that I could be using to nurture the things that are important in my rich and meaningful life. No, JD, I'm not familiar with the no contact rule. Focusing on just being is a meditative challenge, and that's one I've never been able to accomplish. I'm not saying that I'm all that accomplished in meditation anyway, but clearing my mind and just being instead of thinking and etc. is a goal that some people can strive for. For some people that have anxieties, that have trauma, that have ADHD, sometimes clearing your mind and just being without really thinking or analyzing things might not even be a realistic goal. For some people, that causes more stress than it does relaxation. But for those who have it as a goal, recognizing that they are not going to go from being plugged in like we are all the time right now to just being able to sit and be in a week or a month even is important. But if they work towards it gradually as a goal, that can be very fulfilling to recognize that ability to control your thoughts, where you can just be instead of having to ruminate or think. So that's an awesome goal. Kudos to you. And it's not one I think I could do. Whoops. All right. Let's see. This just jumped on me again. Give me a second to get back to where y'all are at. Okay, there we go. Eckhart Tolle. Khalid, I'm glad to have you here. Always glad to have a longtime viewer and the new people too. What drives me to maintain this channel? I believe that everybody has the human right to happiness. And I believe that our medical and mental health system is failing people greatly in that it's not recognizing the whole person. And we have failed to effectively address so many things because we've been so fragmented. And my goal is to bring this stuff out and provide people information and knowledge to empower themselves to take control of their health and their happiness. Again, some things we can't control. There's going to be some times in life that are just unpleasant, to say the least, maybe even disastrous. Been there, done that. However, knowing that there are different tools. If this thing over here isn't working for me, let me try this thing over here. And I've used the example many times that working with people with depression, talk therapy can help. It can help people develop more mindfulness. It can help people identify negative schema that are causing their distress or developed as a result of their distress. We can do all that. But if they're nutrient deficient or hypothyroid or postmenopausal or postandropausal, there's only so much that talk therapy can do when physiologically the system is out of balance, when environmentally people are in situations that are contributing to physical distress. I went to a assisted living facility a few weeks ago, and the lights in the middle of the day were very, very dim. And I thought to myself, how can these people be regulating their circadian rhythms? They're not getting out of bed. Their food doesn't come on a set schedule. It's supposed to, but it doesn't. They're not engaging in much in the way of activities. It was freezing cold in there in the day, so the temperature doesn't drop at nighttime. All those things that set our circadian rhythms were non-existent there. And it broke my heart because my first thought was these people could have such a higher quality of life and we could actually probably see some improvements if we just help them regulate their circadian rhythms. But there's only so much advocacy I can do as a visitor. But that's the reason I do this channel. And I'm really hoping that we get a second wind. We've been kind of struggling for a couple of years now, but it looks like we're getting a second wind. And I'm really hoping that we can get the message out there to people that there are changes they can make. And they're not super complicated changes. They're hard, but they're not super complicated. And that's one of the things that I was thinking about when I decided to try to switch today to a YouTube challenge. So I can challenge people each week, just like I encourage people that are my patients to start making one change each week. My goal is to start encouraging everybody who's watching to make one change each week that's going to help them live a happier, healthier, less painful life. And I also want to make stuff available to people who can't afford it. Let's just say what's out there. In the US, there's a lot of people that won't go to counseling or can't afford counseling. In other countries, the lack of mental health services is just mind-boggling. And YouTube doesn't do a great job with audio translations. My clone does actually speak, I think, 15 different languages. And from the people I've talked to that don't speak English, that have used the clone, it's pretty on par as far as the inflections and pronunciation and things. So that's another reason that I was excited to get that clone up and going, or those clones. We've got the coach clone and the expert clone, was to make it easier for people who don't speak English to access some of the evidence-based research that we go over on the YouTube channel. Horseback riding therapy, or, we'll go with equine-assisted therapy. And there are a lot of different benefits for different people. The riding itself can provide a sense of confidence and competence. When people are riding, especially if they're new riders, but even older riders, when they're riding, they're focusing on themselves and the horse and being kind of at one with the horse. Once they get past that fear that they're going to be thrown, 50 feet away. I'm not a big horse rider. We can talk about donkeys in a minute. But so being at one with the horse, you're not thinking about the stressful things. So this is a time when, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you're more at peace. You're more centered and just being you and the horse. Maybe you're thinking about where you're going or whatever, but your mind is less tempted to wander. So it can give you a stress break, for one. When you're not having your thoughts going everywhere, that stress response may downregulate some. When you are riding a horse, assuming that you like horses, that actually promotes oxytocin release. And oxytocin does so many wonderful things for neuroprotection and cognition. Additionally, people who felt disempowered in the past may get a sense of mastery and competence from being able to control this massive freaking animal. And that can be huge. Now, for me, I love horses. I think they're beautiful creatures, but I've only been on them twice, and neither time did I ever actually feel comfortable. And it wasn't equine-assisted therapy. It was just somebody saying, hey, get on my horse. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll come over and see what it's like. And yeah, I was terrified. But that aside, when it's done right and people feel confident and competent in their connection with the horse, it does great things. When people who haven't felt connected connect with the horse or another animal, it can do wonderful things for their sense of empowerment and again, their oxytocin and feelings of connection. My neighbor had a mule when we lived in Florida, and I remember, it was right after one of our dogs passed away, and I was really upset that day. And I just went over, and Sally was 18 and a half hands high. She was part Clydesdale, so she was a huge horse. In order to do the middle of her back, I would have to stand on steps. And I went over there, and it was just very calming. I was able to talk to this horse, and it was almost like she understood what I was saying. And horse people will say, of course she did. But I was upset, and instead of moving around and being antsy or whatever, she just stood there very patiently for the entire time I was brushing her. So that's another benefit of equine therapy, is taking care of this animal and learning how to develop a bond, learning how to develop trust. When you haven't been able to trust humans, you learn that, hey, I can do this. It's not me. I'm not defective. I just have to have a willing and healthy recipient to develop this bond with. So there are so many things. And even without riding, I mentioned donkeys earlier. We had 2 rescue mini donkeys for about 14 years. And they were wonderful creatures. There was something very calming about just going and sitting. And Flojo would come up when I was working in the garden. She'd come up and just rest her chin on my shoulder while I was weeding in the garden and stuff. But there was just something very calming about having this animal. And there's another word I'm looking for, and it's not calming. She weighed 500 pounds. She could have stomped me if she wanted, but she was extremely gentle, and she always looked out for me. And it was just fascinating how much of a bond we had. And after her sister died, in the evenings, we have a one-story house, and she would come and she'd watch television through my bedroom window. And so I'd leave the television on all night long. And I'd wake up in the morning and she'd be standing out there just watching TV. But we were close. And I think those are a lot of the benefits of equine-assisted therapy. It's hard to envision until you go out there. And that's from a mental health perspective. If we're talking about physical health and agility and strength and those sorts of things, there's lots of other benefits. But from a mental health perspective, that's one of the reasons that it can be so helpful. PTSD survivors, they have been, whatever that trauma was, they felt like they were overpowered, or they felt like they were powerless in that situation. And to be able to control something that is, with a horse, 1,500 pounds, and so 15 times bigger than you are, is kind of mystifying. But it's a great question, because equine therapy is an evidence-based practice, and a lot of people haven't really thought about how it works or why it works, or why it might work so well with people who just really aren't ready to talk to a human. Because you can tell a horse a lot and just get it out. Carl Rogers believed that if you created an environment where there was unconditional positive regard and a person was free to be authentic, that they would clear their own blocks, which is what he focused on in creating humanistic therapy, that listening therapy, very non-directive. You can do a lot of the same stuff with a horse. Sorry if that offends you, but horses can create that safe environment where you've got this animal that you can tell anything to, and they're still going to love you. You can have a bad hair day. They're still going to be happy to see you. You can tell them some of your worst tragedies, and they're not going to be shocked and go, oh my gosh, too much, can't handle it. The horse is just going to sit there and bear the burden with you. And it's really awesome. Okay. So I spent way too much time on the horse thing, but I love horses. Terracotta, I would encourage you to look at the videos. I have a lot of videos on abandonment. Some of them are shorter, and then obviously there are some that are like an hour. And also ask my clone about tips to deal with abandonment, tips to reconnect with your inner child, because it sounds like a lot of your issues come from insecure attachment and a wounded inner child. So those are things that if you were coming to me in therapy, I might ask you if you thought those were issues that needed to be worked on. But again, my clones can direct you to the videos and can give you prompts if you don't want to watch the whole video. Hey there, Roller Girl. Always good to see you. Hello, Claudia. Glad you were able to make it. And Marina, you're right. And y'all have probably seen the cat hair on this, but this is my Mojo. I know. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I haven't combed him yet today, so he's a little scraggly. But I named him Mojo, so whenever I was having a bad day, I could hold him and nurture him and cuddle him and put my energy into him, and he could give me the good mojo back. I was nurturing good mojo. And I know that's silly, but it was either that or grudge, and he just doesn't look like a grudge. So named him Mojo. But my animals are literally lifesavers for me. My dogs, my cats, and all of them are rescues, so all of them have their own issues, but we accept each other, warts and all, and it's wonderful. I have a feral cat downstairs that knows if I'm stressed or whatever, and he'll get up on my chest and he'll just lay there. Now his son, clearly did not get him fixed quite soon enough, but his son is still pretty skittish, but will come up and permit me occasionally to pet him, which is pretty awesome. Just the fact that they're there and they sleep right next to me on the bed, they just don't like, especially the son, doesn't like to be touched as much. He wasn't handled at all as a kitten. But yeah, they bring a smile to my face. Whoops. Oh, I hate when it skips on me. Roller girl. Aurora B says, had major life changes, moved cities, and some change, diagnosed with bipolar, on psychiatric care. I'm pursuing psychology, and my channel is so helpful. I am glad it's helpful to you. Most of us who go into mental health and psychology have struggled with our own issues, and many times we've gone into it because we didn't get the help we needed. And I applaud you for being willing not only to learn about the issues, but to help other people and help them recognize that, you know what? You can have a rich and meaningful life and have bipolar disorder, and other disorders. So I commend you for that. And I am thrilled that you're here. How can I be more positive during challenging times? Well, that sounds like your challenge for this week. And I encourage you to think about it. And as you go through the week, let us know how it's going. Being positive during challenging times often requires two things: hardiness and embracing the dialectics. Hardiness starts with knowing what's important in your rich and meaningful life. And being honest about what's important in your rich and meaningful life. There are things you'd like to have, but if you don't ever get whatever it is, if you don't ever get a Lamborghini, is that going to mean you can't have a rich and meaningful life? Okay, so that's a like out there, but it's not essential to my rich and meaningful life. So know what's important in your rich and meaningful life: the people, the experiences, the things, all that stuff. And I have a video on the YouTube channel on doing a vision board. So you can do a vision board to see your rich and meaningful life and recognize that every part of your rich and meaningful life may require some energy, and you've got to figure out how to divide that energy. Hardiness says recognizing all the things that are important and recognizing in the big scheme of things of your rich and meaningful life, this thing over here that's not going well, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's your job. Okay, it's a piece of your rich and meaningful life. It's not your entire rich and meaningful life. So you're going to embrace the dialectics and recognize that some things, or hopefully most things in my life that are important, are actually okay. They may not be perfect, but they're okay. This thing over here, it's a hot mess. And I can recognize that I've got good things going on in addition to this other thing. So that can be one thing that can be really helpful, is to recognize that everything's not going bad. It's just this thing over here is really taking a lot of energy right now. Second part of hardiness is control. Acknowledge what parts of the thing that's going wrong or the thing that's negative is within your control. And use your energy on that, and use the rest of your energy to nurture those things that are important in your rich and meaningful life. Make those things better and control what you can with this thing that's going bad. There may not be a lot you can do. There may be. I don't know. And then challenge. Seeing the process of using your energy to change the things that you can and to nurture your rich and meaningful life, seeing it as a challenge, not something you've got to do. Seeing whatever's going wrong not as an obstacle or a barrier to your rich and meaningful life, but as an obstacle. It's something you need to get over, something you need to get around, it's something you need to get under, or something you need to get through, just like on an obstacle course. And figuring out how you're going to tackle that is empowering, instead of looking at it going, I can't do that, or feeling like the sky is falling. Getting curious and thinking, okay, what do I need to do to deal with this, to solve this problem? I may not be able to change how all this stuff over here is going, but I can change how it impacts me. I can change how it impacts my family. Maybe we move, maybe we get off social media, whatever it is. But I may not be able to change how, going back to what somebody else said earlier, I may not be able to change how ignorant people think, but I can change how their opinions impact me, because they don't have to impact me. I can acknowledge them. I can have pity for a person that I think is totally misguided, but it doesn't have to make me angry or feel threatened. And that's important. So embracing the good with the bad, recognizing what's important in your rich and meaningful life, and using your energy effectively. I encourage people to review their vision board of their rich and meaningful life every morning. So they start the day saying to themselves, all right, these are the things that are important for my energy today. And when something starts draining their energy that's not on that vision board, they're able to say, nope, not worth my energy. I'm not stealing energy from these people and things to ruminate over this. At the end of the day, I encourage people to look back over the day and identify the things that went well, even a little bit well. Our brain easily identifies the screw-ups. That's what we're trained to do. That's what our brain is wired to do, is to notice the problems. But focusing intentionally on how can I, or what did I do today, or what happened today that actually was good, or maybe even not as bad as expected. And recognizing that the progress that's happening, or recognizing the lessening of the negativity or awfulness of whatever the situation is. Those things are strategies that you can use when it seems like everything is going to, forgive my language, hell in a handbasket. There are a lot of other strategies, but that's one. We are at the 1 o'clock hour, and I'm sorry I didn't get to everybody's stuff today. Remember, these Mondays, we're having a YouTube challenge, and I'm encouraging you to pick one thing every Monday, typically on a topic that we talk about, one thing every Monday that you are going to start working on to improve your health, your happiness, and your relationships. If I didn't get to your questions today, I am sorry. You can consult or ask my clone at docsnipes.com/clones. The expert clone will give you more long-winded answers, kind of like I do in these. And the coach clone will be more conversational and interactive. You can try both of them. But that is something that you can use in between these AMAs, and if I'm not able to get to your question. Everybody have an amazing day. Have an amazing week. I will see those of you who are coming to the CEU presentation on Wednesday. It's going to be part 1 of the dementia series, dementia series. We're going to talk about the causes, consequences, and strategies for dealing with dementia over the next 3 weeks. Have a wonderful, wonderful time.